there's so much to think about and talk about in this concept. The colonial system has really had an impact on our ways of thinking, our ways of interacting, and our own ways of being, whether through fear, anger, shame, or guilt. And the colonial way of doing things was quite the shock to me. Years ago, Native Child and Family Services, before they were mandated, they were an advocate program for Aboriginals and versus children's aid societies in the courts. And I really like that because what we're doing is bringing forth who we are as Aboriginal people and celebrated and participating, reintroducing ceremonies, reintroducing our great laws, reintroducing all of our laws before contact. And we can see what the end result is. I mean, that's where we're sitting. And that's why I like that. There's so many of us here putting our minds together to see what we can do with this, because I don't think there's any one person that has all the answers to deal with these things that we're dealing with today. I think those things are really, let's make it clear on what we're dealing with. Oh my God, there's just the impact on our children. I have to start from the very beginning. Although I didn't, I see the need for it. And when I speak to our people, I like to go back to the very beginning. And the very beginning with us is our rites of passage. And in that rites of passage, going through those 7 stages of growth and the information needed for that time, uh, those were our foundations of a healthy, well-being village or nation. I think that's really important for us to look at, because they have been impacted for well over 200 years. You already know this, and I know that, and I don't want to insult your intelligence by bringing it up every once in a while. But for me, that's a really good starting place on all of the issues that we have to deal with today. Mm. You know, what I heard, and I wasn't experienced in it, was that when we raised our children, we raised them to be children. We didn't raise them to be males. We didn't raise them to be females. We didn't raise them to be two-spirit. We didn't raise them to be anything other than a human being. Well-balanced human being. We taught our children how to think. We allowed our children, I guess, the luxury of venting our emotions, to clear out our emotions, welcoming their spirit on this earth walk, so that they know as they walk through that their spirit walk is going to increase later on in I guess, new ideas and new concepts. We taught them how to think, not what to think. I think that's really important. We taught them to be a whole human being from day one, and accepted them as a whole human being, where they knew they were accepted into the family. Male, female, two-spirited, red, yellow, black, and white, short, tall, ugly, cute, whatever is presented with us, we accepted and we celebrated it. I hope that's making a little bit of sense, because we knew how we treated our children, and we treated our teens and treated our adults, is how they're going to treat us when we get to be very old. We know that hurt people hurt people. And I know that we have all been hurt in one way or another, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. But our job is to work with individuals to help them get through whatever experience they're going through today, good, bad, and or ugly. We were well equipped to move into the next stage. We were well equipped to go into the next stage, which is an adult stage. I think these things to me, I'm going to have to explain this later as we go through, or it'll explain itself. Is that what we went through is recorded within our thought processes, it's recorded in our emotions, it's recorded in our bodies, and it's recorded in our spirit, the things that we went through, good, bad, and or ugly. Our job in a healthy way was to teach our children how to get through it in a good way without creating any kind of harm later on to someone else. Taught them how to think and not what to think, with our biases, with our I hate this term, but the know-it-all, because we have those know-it-alls who hurt a lot of people with their way they bring out their knowledge. It's scary. And you know why it's scary? Because I wasn't taught those things. I wasn't taught those things until later on in my life. I'm big enough now to stop whatever I want to stop. Be it racism, be it physical abuse, emotional, spiritual abuse. I am big enough to make it stop. And the only way I can make it stop is to look at myself and my own reaction to those situations. In treatment, we use what we call a lifeline, and a lifeline is a pictorial essay of our life experiences, good, bad, and or ugly. And we take a look at those ones that still affect us into our adulthood. And we know what happens when that happens. Those triggers, those old memories that bring up those harsh feelings. And it's to guide us through. Our teachings were never meant to be remedial. Our teachings were meant to be exercised. Our medicines were meant to be used from day one all the way through to making it through the Western door or death. We had those things. They've been interrupted. So it's up to you and I. It's up to you and I to do our own exploring. And what brings us here today is, as social workers, as somebody who's concerned about our teachings, somebody who's concerned about colonialism, somebody who's concerned about all those things that affect us today. So that when we come here and put it all on the table, we can sort it out together to what's usable, it's no longer applicable, and being able to direct someone to take responsibility for themselves, again, physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. Those are tools that we never heard growing up until later on in life. And it's a scary prospect to go back to take a look at those triggers that affect our everyday experience. Whether we're woman, man, spirit, children. It takes a lot of courage to really explore those. Hurt people hurt people. We have put our minds together to make it stop today. Give us tools so when we work with work with people coming up through the ranks or moving into the city or moving into our territory or marrying into our family, that we offer the support of well-being. Again, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Now I have to fast forward to this because our people knew that. Our people knew that in our ceremonies, and this is where I'm going to give myself permission to make a mistake, because I know that the things I learned over my 72 years aren't the things that you learned at your young age. And it's liable to totally contradict what you have already established within your own well-being, within your own being. So our job is to help clear that pathway, to encourage the courage and bravery it takes to look at our past, look at those triggers, and to readjust them. Readjust them in the way we explore them and look at them, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. So that I am no longer a 5-year-old kid emotionally. I am no longer a 7-year-old kid spiritually. Our ceremonies ask us, whether it's a pipe ceremony, sun dance, sweat lodge, whatever ceremony we go through, helps us and encourages us to put closure to past experiences, that we don't carry it over into the next experience. Some of us have had bad relationships, and we carry it over into the next relationship, and that person has to carry all our fears and anxieties from the past relationships. How fair is that? And again, how fair is it for you? So we're taught to think that way in that world out there. Taught to think that way. When we go back to our ceremonies help us to relieve and to let that go, to be able to say goodbye to someone who died, especially right now, what we're all going through with all this grief, and everyone knows somebody who's died in this last while. And all of our teachings ask us to come to terms with that, to deal with the grief so it doesn't affect our thinking, to clear our minds so it doesn't affect our emotions, to clear both of them so it doesn't affect us physically, and then finally to spiritually. That's what our ceremonies are all about. Now think of a society that has gone through all of that without all the interruptions, and just that to see how we can thrive once we deal with some of these issues, because they're certainly interrupting our relationship. It's interrupting my relationship with women. It's interrupting my relationship with men. It's interrupting my relationship with Two Spirit. It's interrupting my relationship with my children and grandchildren. And I'm not too crazy about that part. I want to accept and go to ceremonies with the full intent of closure. One of the hardest things I ever heard, I have 5 children, male or girls or females. They were brought up to be children. They weren't brought up to be males or females until it was their time to change. Every one of them, when they start becoming a young adult, every one of them came to me and they told me every mistake I ever made in their upbringing. And to tell you the truth, I am the best dad that I could think of. I'm there for my kids mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially, and any other way. Experiential, take them to ceremonies, take them here, take them there. And I loaded my life up with all of those experiences to bring us close together. And in those experiences, excuse the term, but shit happened. And it affected my children in their perspective. So they were brave enough to come to dad and say, this is what you did. This is how I felt when you did it. I am still carrying it, Dad. And I bit my tongue. I sat back. I trembled because I was scared as heck. Because they were absolutely right. They were absolutely right in their view of it and in their personal experience. They were absolutely right. And I had no right telling them, no, 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 that's not the way, to make excuses for my behaviors. Scary. And this is someone who works in treatment. This is someone who works in counseling. This is someone who works in ceremonies. And I was scared as heck to listen to all of that. And it hurt. It hurt to hear that. But when all their pain was finished, all that buildup of anger, fear, shame, and guilt, when that was finished, when their crying stopped, they could see their daddy again. I didn't even have to apologize, because what they brought was what they had to carry. And as soon as they put it down, they didn't have to carry it anymore. So those are our ceremonies. Those are the ceremonies that we practice from day one to where we are today as an adult, so that we are balanced in all four areas. Does that make a little bit of sense? Can you see that? We're just exactly where we are dealing with people outside of our own selves, people outside of our family, people outside of our community. And I've had to evaluate myself more than once. I mean, it's almost a daily thing with me. But I have to own my behaviors. I have to own my thoughts without imposing them on another one. And that imposing is really important. Imposing. I want you to remember that, because we are being imposed with all these other things outside of our culture. We were taught to behave to certain situations, thus the need for ceremonies. But like I said earlier, it's scary to get to that point. I'm not scared anymore. I don't have to be afraid of that anymore. So that's an awful lot to think about. That's an awful lot to put on this table. And we haven't even really just explored what a two-spirit goes through, two-spirit person goes through when they go to ceremonies. Because I think we already know. I think we already know. When you went to Sunday school, when you went to church, the impact that society out there has done to our people. That's what we're dealing with. Acceptance and the ability to see someone else's gift and to help them nurture that gift. Their gift is not being two-spirited. Their gift is being who they are. physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. So how do we relay that kind of message to someone who's never experienced that? How do we share that with someone who has been put down their whole life and beaten up physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, socially, worldly, whatever ways that our people have been beaten up? When I go to a sweat, I go to sweat for myself. When I go to Sundance, I go to Sundance for myself. When I go to any ceremony, got pipe ceremony, whatever ceremony, I go there for myself. And I don't really care who's running the ceremony because this is about me and my what I bring into that sweat lodge.
We
I
have
work with. I'm sorry.
we have a question, Pat.
Oh, sure, sure.
We have Jamie with their hand up today.
Hello, Jamie.
Hi, Pat. um, I really appreciate everything you're saying about ceremony, and really wanting to honor a person for their gifts and who they are and accepting them and including them in who they are. So right now, just to share a little bit, my role is I'm the SOGI Youth Support Worker at Simcoe Muskoka Family Connections.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I support youth that are part of the 2S LGBTQ plus community. And one of the questions I have is pertaining to ceremony and names, particularly for trans individuals. I know a name, be it spirit name, English name, are critically important to people. And when folks or youth are, um, going through a transition or identifying as non-binary and experimenting with names and pronouns and things like that, is there a process or a ceremony or some thought given to Indigenous youth who have spirit names that may be gendered names? That would they go through another naming ceremony? Would they, and I can speak to this from experience. So I was gifted a spirit name several years ago, before I personally transitioned. So my spirit name has woman at the end of it, which is no longer necessarily applicable to what I look like, but that was the name given to me. So does that name still apply, or do I have to go through and, ask for the gift of a new name? And the same thing would apply for our youth. What would happen for them?
Okay, it's all about perspective and interpretation. Uh, we can't think in English when we talk about our spirit names,
Mhm.
our ceremony. We can't speak in English to that. It shows you the difference between the colony and traditional. My son was given a name at Longhouse, and the old lady that gave it to him, like myself, looked in his future to see what's needed to help encourage him to help him thrive. The name she gave him was Yokwendo, and I know he doesn't mind me talking about this. So Yokwendo talks about two nuts hanging. We get the same reaction no matter where we go when he talks about his name and uh, two nuts hanging. When he was 5 years old, we were at ceremonies and someone asked me, "Hey, what's your name?" The Yokwendo. So what does that mean? He says, two nuts hanging. One's a male and one's a female, and they're connected to the earth through the tree. Now he could have taken it as something that's derogatory, but he chose to make it something that means to him. And for him to at 5 years old to explain it in that kind of a healthy way of being, it tells me that he speaks his language, and that was my son. am I going in the right direction with that question? Because I think it's really important that
Yep.
we understand that question.
Yes.
I have a lot of people come to me for names, and where we come from, our names are given differently than Anishinaabe or Cree or. But, they ask me for my name, and I tell them that, and they said, "Well, I'd really like a name from you." So what I asked them to do is, what's your English name?
My English name?
Yeah.
Jamie.
Do you know what that means? Do you know what
Uh,
means?
no.
Oh, what about your middle name?
Lynn.
Do you know about what it means?
No.
Oh, how about your surname?
Birnbaum.
Mm-hmm. So what I would tell people to do is, why did your parents give you that name? Or why did your grandma give you that name?
Okay.
Why did the elders in your community give you that name? Which is vastly different than getting your name at in ceremonies. Because the person who's doing that ceremony, name giving ceremony, takes the time to know that person. They know their gifts. They know everything that they bring forward. Whether or not it's male or female or
doesn't matter.
Yeah. What does it matter?
Okay.
Because it was given to you out of heart. Your parents loved you. They may have been creeps. They may have been,
yes.
They must have been all those things, but they loved you enough to take some time to see where that name would take you.
And it's interesting because when I did transition, I kept my name. I didn't change my name.
Oh. And I think that when we change our names to suit whatever's normal out there, whether it's what's the word, misogynist? That's the word.
Thank you.
If you can get past that, you got it licked. You got it made.
Okay.
Just to get past that unacceptable. We all want to be accepted. All work towards our own acceptance.
Yes.
Do we accept ourselves? And that's going to be the whole ticket around all of this, is to guide people back to full acceptance of who they are, physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. I'm not saying this, but it's not out of a criticism. And I know, because I've done it myself, is at times I've walked into the room and say, "How come nobody likes me, you assholes?" There's a big difference.
Thanks,
When I walk in fully confident of my existence, I don't care if they like me.
True.
That's theirs. So when somebody hits us with, "Oh, you stupid, ugly looking Indian," or you queer, or you whatever they throw at us. First of all, I want to punch them in the face. But second of all, says, no, that's not needed here. But I acknowledge where that person comes from. I acknowledge their pain. I acknowledge their experience. So that way I don't have to take it on as a personal thing. And we do always take these things on as personal.
Yeah.
Even when we're walking down the street, somebody's a dirty Indian. I mean, we hear all that crap.
Yeah.
Don't let that be a trigger. And I think that's what we're all dealing with here, is showing people what their triggers are and how to deal with those triggers. I want to go back to we treat our children like children until their moon time or until their voices change. And we did that because we knew that they were ready for the next line of gifts that our community, our family is going to be giving them. Can you
Thank you.
imagine growing up with that? I want you to be, no, I don't even know you, but I want you to be happy with who you are.
Yeah.
Because if you're happy and content and thriving with who you are, my grandchildren are watching you. My great-grandchildren are watching you. And how you respond is how they're going to respond.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the line, we all have to take responsibility for our interactions with people who don't like queers or don't like Indians or don't like.
Yeah.
They're out there.
Yes, they are.
And the minute we respond to them, they got us. The minute they piss us off,
Yeah.
they got us. And for most of us here at being Aboriginal, we have a big concern in our community around witchcraft and somebody throwing bad medicine at us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it was explained to me that bad medicine and those kinds of things that are out there, they're all based on fear, ignorance.
Yeah.
Every bit of it. So when they throw those things at us, they're throwing us their fears, they're throwing their angers, and then it becomes our own after a while.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie, for sharing your story. I seen that. I seen it for the first time on my chat here.
Well, thank
So,
you. I appreciate that.
Okay, if you think we're going in the right direction, raise your hand a bit because I think that I can go off on so many tangents. But today I want to stay with our own personal health, be it male, female, them, us, her, she, him, her, all those things. This is all brand new to me. This is all brand new to me because I accepted you as a whole human being when you were born. This is all new to me. Now here I am 72 years later and someone's saying, well, can you call me them? Well, I probably could if there was more than one of you here. Hear what I'm saying with that. I mean, there's so many things out there that divide us, so many different attitudes that divide us. And even at your young age, what does this old bugger know? You know, this presenter guy, he's 74. What does he know? He's just an old man. I accepted you for who you are. Can you accept me for who I am?
100% accepted, Pat.
Thank you. And I don't work on it, but I sure love to hear it when I hear that.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. More than
you.
I can say.
Thank you.
You're a good role model to my grandchildren. And I
Thank you.
really appreciate that.
Thanks.
Joshua is really looking there. He's really thinking. One of my gifts, one of the gifts that I enjoy doing is exactly what we're doing here. I used to watch the old people and they would all get together and they'd bring out a great big pot of tea and they would sit there and they would just talk about what's going on in the family, what's going on in the community, what's going on in the rest of the world. And what I liked about that, it showed me that everybody's thoughts and ideas are important. Although they may be off to one person, they may be right on to another person. I don't always want to be right. and I give myself permission every chance I get to be wrong. I like that style. I don't know more than any one of you. Just different things. Now, most of the questions I seen on Facebook had to do with ceremonies and what's protocol and what's not protocol. What what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And I really believe that when we put this unacceptable tag on our forehead that says unacceptable, we become unacceptable when we go into a ceremony. And that's why I'm trying to share, I want to share. What we put out comes back. And I know that a lot of our two-spirit have been hurt by some really horrible people that would do that to another person. But one thing I've learned, and you have to excuse this term, this is just a generic term. I don't hate all white people. I don't hate all authorities. I don't hate people who are non-Indian, non-native. I don't hate any of those people. So when I walk into a meeting, that doesn't come out. I think those things are really important. What we put out comes back. I think that we all have to own all these things. I sympathize and I have a lot of compassion for two-spirited, especially around ceremonies, because everyone is acceptable at a ceremony, no matter what the ceremony is. No one should be excluded from ceremonies for whatever reason. But you are going to run into those people who believe that two-spirited aren't welcome, or women aren't welcome because of the men's sweat, or men aren't welcome because we're going to run into that. Very quickly, I got a very quick story. When in my years of learning and spending my time traveling across Canada and the United States to different ceremonies, I ran into some very disturbed, hurtful elders and ceremony conductors. We're going back, say, let's 50 years. Let's go back 50 years. 50 years ago, residential schools were still up and running. 50 years ago, the people that were carrying those ceremonies were the targets of residential schools. They were taught to teach the way they were taught. And then bring that back into our communities. So the fear of two-spirited, that's not ours. It never was. But you can see over the years where those kinds of divisions imposed on us, and we picked them up and ran with them. So we ran into a lot of elders out there. They're very mean in their application teaching. What kind of Indian are you? You don't know. Don't even speak your own language. Don't even know who your people are. Grow up. I had to grow up in that. And I had to grow up in learning how to forgive those elders because they were only dealing with what they had. That was all they could do. But I did want to thank them for at least carrying those teachings and sharing them later on, me and other people around me. And I think that sometimes we have to give ourselves a shake when we go into ceremonies to know that when I come into your territory, I'm not coming in to tell you how to run Sweat Lodge. I'm not coming in to tell you how to run your ceremonies. Mine is to be there and learn. And it's usually learn about myself. So when we talk about Two-Spirit, talk about ceremonies, talk about teachings, talk about all those things and what it means to be Aboriginal, we're starting over. Every one of us are starting over. But learning how to deal with past issues, learning how to deal with past trauma, learning how to deal with past impositions gets us to a point where everything and everyone is acceptable. Even those Crees, or those Ojibwas, or those Mohawks. We're taught that everything is acceptable. When you really listen, and I use this an awful lot, nothing is sacred until you have an intimate relationship with it. So if you don't have an intimate relationship with your own spirit, your own emotions, your own body, your own body, mind, spirit, and emotions, if you don't have that sacred connection, it's not going to be. Nothing is sacred until you have an intimate relationship with it, including our feathers, including our beads, including our outfits, including everything that shows the rest of the world who we are. Imagine being ashamed of that. So I think if there's anybody has empathy and understanding about what Two-Spirit are going through and what women are going through, what men are going through, what our kids are going through. Wow. Got a long ways to go, but we're getting there. And, you know, I had to excuse those elders back in the day because they were doing the best they could. Just like your parents. Just like me when I raised my children. Just doing the best we could with what we had. So we have these two-spirited considerations. We have women's and missing murdered women. We have children's experiences. And my pet peeve at this point is that why my children had to come to me when they become adults and tell me everything that they had done wrong. Those were all my learned behaviors. I had to learn how to accept that. I learned how to know that you know, it was never ours in the first place. So that letting go is really important, especially when we're dealing with our children. To allow them to see that Dad's got feelings. Hey, Dad loves us. That, you know, Dad did the best he could with what he had. Then that's when the forgiveness part comes in. So that I can forgive the church. I can forgive the government. I can forgive all of those people who have ever hurt me because they were only dealing with what they had, including my parents and grandparents. So those are some of the lessons that were really important to me growing up. Because if not, I'd hate everybody. If I hadn't have gone through those ceremonies, I'd still be out there carousing. I'd still be doing all those really dumb things that I did when I was a kid. I'd be using violence to get my own way. I using verbal violence, emotional. You know, we know that we all know what it does to our people. We all know what it does to ourselves. So it takes a pretty committed person to really take a look at those experiences to move forward without it. There's got to be another question out there. Are we going in the right direction? And it's always my question, no matter what Zoom I'm working with, no matter what group, are we going in the right direction? Because I do not want to be the leader. We're going there together. Hmm. Hmm. Let's jump back to Joshua. As a male here, I need support. No, I don't. I do not.
We had a lot, and I think in the registration form, maybe it was just a way that I had like worded my question. But I had kind of prompted for any questions to do with the community and the topic overall, to kind of be put in that that section. A lot of the comments that came back were also just regarding the example I had put in there. So they were specific to cultural practices where there is like gender specific sweats or gender specific ceremony and things like that. So a lot of the comments that we did get back are to do with the gender specific kind of segregation that we can sometimes see in ceremony, and where and how do we kind of support that, or how do we create a new space. So that was a lot of the topics that came back. We also had some questions about just supporting um, gender non-conforming staff as well. So in the workplace, I think we've kind of touched on this a little bit with our pronouns, but do we have gender non-conforming staff in the group that would like to kind of speak to that? And how they would like to see themselves supported, or what works best for them?
Well, hmm. So much was going through my head when you were talking there, and it had to do with gender specific. Um, I prefer, and I became more comfortable with my own existence when I recognize this. I recognize within our own at Longhouse is there's nothing really gender specific in ceremonies at Longhouse that I had ever witnessed. That all were respected. To our clan mothers, I guess the female and the males, the chiefs, the ones chosen ones. I don't know about gender specific, you know, and I've heard stories about you can't pick up that drum when you're on your moon time. You can't come to Sweat Lodge without a skirt on. You know, the way I was introduced to a Sweat Lodge, I thought it was crazy. I thought people were nuts. That they'd want to crawl into that little hut, these hot rocks, steam floating out of it. I just thought it was crazy. Even in that time, in 1974, when I looked inside that Sweat Lodge, there was men, women, and I don't know who else was in there. But nothing that divided the community. I really believe that when we're in the sweat lodge, I'm in the sweat lodge with two-spirited people, they have something to say. Doesn't mean that I have to wear it. They have something to say, like my children. I don't know who's two-spirited when in the sweat lodge. When that door closes, I can't see who's male or female. When I'm in there as a male, I hear everything that I have ever done to our female counterparts. I hear the damage that we've done. On the other hand, I talk about my experience. The women in there get to hear the damage that they've done to men, and damage that we've done to each other. When I go in with two-spirited, it's that same way. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter once that door closes, whether you're male, female, them, us, or what have you, Irish, Jewish. It doesn't matter as long as you're in there doing the work that needs to be done. I don't know about gender specifics. I don't know about inclusion from a colonial perspective. I can't understand that. And maybe someday I'll sit down with a dictionary and go through all those words that they've given us, deal with that. But it doesn't affect me, so I'm not going to deal with that. What it is affecting is our relationship here today, and what we deal with, our children are watching. Our grandchildren, they're watching and they're listening to everything that we're talking about. So I am pretty uncomfortable when it comes to division. I'm uncomfortable when it comes to segregation. I'm really uncomfortable with all those things that imply that we shouldn't be here together. I don't want to give anybody else that power. Do you like me because I'm straight? Do you like me because I'm queer? Do you like me because I'm male or female? I mean, I'm so tired of that. I accept you for who you are. Yeah? Well, you guys are all quiet in here.
Well, I just want to say something in regards to that. I think it's just people's ignorance to not accepting them for who they are. And they're still people, they're still human beings. And and I think that once we start working with this and learning, especially at the powwow, for example, I find that there's more coming out now, like the gender part of it. Like there's girls that are, dancing grass. And that's not new. That happened before, because when I traveled a lot, I seen a lady who was dancing grass, and I thought, what's going on here? Not really knowing, and understanding that. But as years pass, you get to understand after, and respect those people, because um they were always pushed down to not saying who they are, and they were kept in the closet, kind of a thing. And we don't want to address that. We don't want to see that. We don't want to understand that. And again, that's what society has put upon them, and to hide them because of who they are, I heard a story about the two-spirited people, that they were put here to say, for example, a wife lost her husband, or a husband lost his wife or whatever, right? Those two-spirited had an obligate, they had something there that's why they're here, so that they would fill in, not how people see them, but how we accepted them and how they were accepted into the communities. So they had a role, right? But people, as time went by, when we started, when we had the church come in and everything, oh, that's bad, you can't have that. They're bad people. So, so we have to look at that and change our mind frame. Like Pat was saying, we have to change that way of thinking and how we adjust and accept, right? And so when we look at young people coming up today, and it's even in their own families where they're being, harassed and, made to make them look like they're dirty and making them look like they're nobody. But they have feelings, they have emotions, they have everything that anybody else has, right? So, when we look at that, we think about, for example, my daughters said to me one time, they went, "Mom, what would you do if I was a lesbian?" And I went, what am I going to do? I accept you because you're my child, you're my daughter, right? And so that's the acceptance of being able to see that, because it's out there, and to accept that within your family, right? That's where it begins. So when we we're negligent about, you know, um, our children, who they are, right? When we look at them as people, right? They are who they are, and their identity shouldn't matter. We have to learn how to accept it. But it's very hard for people to do that when they have that thought in their heads, right? Like Pat says, there's those thoughts in there for people to start thinking, right? Even myself, when I was younger, I was like, is that for real? That, no, I don't see, because I didn't understand it. But now that I understand it more, it's more of accepting that this is what's happening today, and we have to look at that, and how do we support our young people? How do we support our communities and helping them? Because again, they're already, when we look at society itself, there's so many barriers that they have to go through, and how do we help them? Right. And as workers, that's our job to figure out avenues and things that can support them. And I think that that's itself, right? And I just, that's my train of thought anyway. So hopefully we're all going in the same direction. Miigwech.
Oh, I love that. Not because we agree, but because it's another perspective, right? We never, there was no distinction. Everything I'm learning about Two-Spirit, everything I'm learning about our societies, the Aboriginal societies, everything I learn about that is total acceptance. They were never marginalized. They were never shunned. They were another human being brought into our communities to be treated like a human being, not male or female, not them or us or any of those other things, but just in those four areas: body, mind, spirit, and I always go back to that part. Our job is to teach them how to be safe and how to be confident and how to be okay in their existence, whatever it is. Um, I don't know anybody here, but from a male's perspective, if you came to me and said, "I'm queer," you came to me and said, "I'm lesbian," or if you came to me and said, "Well, I'm heterosexual and I had sex last night," uh, that's not my business. Your job is to teach me how to love you. And that's why I say we have to go back to the very beginning through our rites of passage. We have to go back to the very beginning about boundaries and setting boundaries and learning values. Those are the important things. And I find a lot of the Two-Spirit that I haven't worked with in Toronto, a lot of them are got a real good spiritual connection, but still carrying around a lot of shame on being gay. And that's why I think it's really important for us to know what our personal gifts that we're bringing forward. And sometimes we can't see it ourselves. So sometimes well, and most times it works in our community when the chiefs and the clan mothers give us our name with future prospects. I think we need to get back to that. It's all about self-acceptance. It's all about the new term. The new term today is self-healing. We're not sick. We're not sick. Self-healing is. I stay away from that term as much as I can. It's all perspective, and it's all deals with race. It deals with class systems and all those other things. And I won't play with that part, but I'll spend some time with you and start recognizing, from my perspective, how beautiful person you really are. That I find you totally acceptable in my world. I trust you with my children. That's what our teachings are all about, that encouraging, that nurturing, that loving and learning. Nothing is sacred until you have an intimate relationship with it. My children weren't sacred. They were only a figment of my imagination until they were born. Then they became sacred. Not because somebody says it's sacred or not sacred. I like it. There's some thinking going on there.
We have some questions as well. I've seen Juanita and Lisa also had their hands up as well. But I know Lisa put theirs down, so we only have one hand up at the moment. So oh, there's Lisa again. So I don't know who was first, but whoever would like to speak. Let's go. Juanita, you had your hand up. So you were waiting very patiently.
Actually, Lisa was first. If you want to
Okay,
go
yeah.
first, Lisa.
All
Okay.
the support in the circle.
Yeah.
I love it.
Pat, I really appreciate what you just shared there in terms of, with different ceremonies that happen, and I think the same way in terms of, we as Anishinaabeg people, we're kind people, we're accepting people. And, if we're following those 7 grandfather teachings, and why does it matter who someone is and what ceremonies that they could participate in? I totally understand there's protocols, so we have to respect that. And, I see, you're right, times are changing, everything's changing around us in this world. And we just have to continue learning and understanding, the ways of the LGBT community and how they participate in our ceremonies. Like, I just don't see that, it doesn't matter who they are. We accept who they are, and we'll get there. Like you said, Pat, we'll get there. So that was just my comment. And like, I totally appreciated how you explained that it's, obviously a lot of people, or even, Anishinaabe, some of us are still, working on our journey here. And we have to learn those things. And, that's why I say, if the 7 grandfather teachings are there, that's what we should be living by. And it doesn't matter if I go into an all-female sweat lodge, and if there's an individual there, who has changed gender to, the female, that's fine. But maybe that's just me, but but I hear what you're saying, Pat, and thanks for sharing those words.
Hey, we're all trans in one way or another. We come from our mother, the earth, who has all the minerals and everything that we have in our physical being here. We're all transitioning. So I love where we're going with all of it. But thank you, that Lisa. That was going in the right direction. And who's this other person here?
We have Winnie now.
Honey, thank you, Pat. That was so great to hear, like, that you would, that we're not meant to be shunned or shun others, and to have others trust, your children with. It's so hard to explain, but and I hope this isn't triggering to anyone when I say this. I've had a great deal of hardship with my in-laws, for example. This was a fair bit of time ago, probably about 2008. But we were watching SpongeBob, and they were saying, "Oh, SpongeBob makes you," and I'm like, "Whoa, okay." I'm like, that a percentage of your grandchildren will be, so you shouldn't, be so harsh with your words. And that was my way of talking, but it immediately escalated to none of my grandchildren will be, or I'll send them to, yeah, like a conversion camp. And I didn't talk to them for 6 months because of how hard that was for me. My response to her actually was, I hope that both of my children end up being LGBTQS+, because I know that they would know that they're loved and accepted. So, and surprisingly enough, they both came out to me, and I was very happy. And so is my family. And it's come to a point now where my in-laws have learned a lot more and have gone through a lot more experiences where they are more accepting. And now that my children don't feel scared to be in their presence now, because that was my number one thing, is that I wanted my children to be safe wherever they went. And even though they're in-laws and everything, it's like I refuse to let them be a part of something that makes them uncomfortable. And yeah, so anyway, sorry, that's a really long little bit there, but thank you for saying that, because it's very much needed right now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that's the part that I want to deal with, especially in circles like this. That I'd like to get rid of all the colonial aspects, especially around time. I really believe that when we come together, it worked together for as long as it takes, and we all have something important to say, and we're all welcomed to say what we need to say. And I think that's really important. We never have to say, "I'm sorry I took so long." Here I am celebrating your life and celebrating with you that you made it through all of everything that you've gone through, and you're still here, and I'm celebrating that. And you're saying, "I'm sorry I took up some time." Not necessary. I'm glad that you had the courage to take up the time. That was, I think that's excellent. Don't stop. Do not stop. But again, it's not what I say, it's how we say it. And I love most of my in-laws. I love most white people. I love most Aboriginal people. I love most Ojibwe people. But I do know in the back of my mind that there are those out there that are questionable. So it's really okay not to have everybody love us. It really is. because everything that we say or do is going to affect someone down the road. Wow.
Thank you so much for sharing, and Wedge. We also have Stephen who has their hand up. I just wanted to make sure that they got their turn as well.
Oh, hi there. I'll turn my camera on for a minute. I'm on my phone, so it's really awkward to have my camera on because you'd be staring at my ceiling half the time. I just wanted to comment on some of the things you said about, like, it doesn't matter who you are, where you came from. I just need to know how to love you, and I just need you to teach me how to love you. And that really resonated with me because recently we had a young person who grew up in care, who went to many, many, many different foster homes within his time in care. And he did a presentation for foster parents and upcoming foster parents about what his experience was like. And one of the things that he really tried to emphasize was, you need to ask us how we need to be loved and what our love language is, instead of expecting us to fit within the mold of what your house is and making us adapt to kind of what yours is. That it's so important to us to feel a part of your community, a part of your family, a part of kind of what's going on when you ask us what we need to be loved and how to love us. And so it was a really nice kind of full circle thing by you talking about that, because, regardless of where our kids are coming from and the kids who are placed in multiple homes and the experiences that they have, that relates so much to the population we're working with, because they're expected to adapt and adapt and adapt and change who they are and change the way that they see things and whatever, for risk of being rejected, right? That if somebody took a minute to say, what do you need from me to love you? What do you need from me to make you feel welcome? What do you need from me to make you feel accepted? That would go such a long way and show such a sign of respect to the kids we work with. So thank you for bringing that into this presentation, because I think it really resonated with me in that regard.
Well, that's what mandate does for us. It limits us on our interaction with our clients. It limits us in conversations that we can have with our clients. Years ago, I worked in the prisons, and what I found in the prisons is when it's time for them to leave the prison, they're dropped off in Toronto or Kingston or Vancouver. They're dropped off there. They're dropped off there. Usually in the same place that they were picked out from, the same lifestyle, in the same community, in the same family. So these guys go off and they do their time and they come out and they're dropped right back in the middle of everything that went on in that family or in that community. What I found working with our men in the system, but I would take the individual back to their family so that there'd be a welcome home ceremony, so that the client knows that they're welcome home, that they have a place where they belong, and the family gets to hear all the changes that have taken place with the individuals coming back into their community and their family. So the next step was to take them to a community function where the community welcomes them back. So they're welcome back into the family, welcome back into the community. And 90% of the men that I did that with coming out of the prison and going back to welcome home ceremonies, they are still out of prison. The ones that were dropped off in the middle of Toronto were back in within days and within weeks. We all need some place to belong. Sometimes we dwell on the differences way too much. I have a friend who's two-spirited, and when we're together, it never comes up. We don't have to talk about Two-Spirit. We don't have to talk about sex. We don't have to talk about those things. What really matters is our participation and our willingness to share, take down some of our own walls. Yeah, we've got a long ways to go, especially with the children, because they were raised in the middle of all of that confusion. Where do I belong? Who am I? What's my name? Am I? All those questions that our children ask themselves, and it's reaffirmed all the time. Oh, it doesn't matter. You're going to go to this foster home for a while now. Oh, you got to move from there. You got to come over to this one. And never a welcome home ceremony. One of the things that we worked on in Toronto was reuniting a family, and this young woman worked her butt off. She did everything, that jumped all of the hoops that she had to jump through, and created her own hoops so that she could jump through them and make sure that she knew how to do that. And we had a welcome home ceremony for those children back into her home. Those things are really necessary. And you've got to ask yourself that every once in a while. Ask yourself, where have I felt welcome? I think that's the key for a lot of us. Where do I belong? Who do I belong to? All those things. I find it totally acceptable. You're there very often, do you? Unless you got an A+ in geography or something. Oh, you're smart. Did that go over your head, sir? You're fully acceptable as long as you're doing things to impress me. Never mind the two-spirited. Never mind women's issues. Never mind men's, children's issues. Never mind. I like who we are. I like where we're going with all of this. I think this needs to happen a lot more than it has in the past, where we do sit down together and trade ideas and concepts. I like that. It's not so mandated. We're sitting here because we care. I know you are. Well, some of you are getting paid, but you're here because you want to do a better job, so you can get more pay. We're here. That's the important thing. And we're sharing. That's the important thing. I like being Mohawk. No, I really do. In spite of everything, I like being Mohawk. One of our favorite sayings is, do not lead, I may not follow. Do not follow, I may not lead, but walk with me and be my friend. Isn't that what this is all about? We will walk with our client, our colleagues, and because we know the path, isn't it our job to walk with the client? And I think that's what we're doing here by sharing these ideas, or two-spirit ceremonies, protocol, and all of the other things that affect those of us who are straight. We're all affected by those same kinds of things. Being Mohawk, going into Ojibwe territory, I really got to be aware of myself when I go visit other places, but it's only out of respect. I'm not there to change anything. I wonder how loud it would be to hear all those wheels that are turning out here right now. There's a person here named Ashley. There's no picture here. Are you there, Ashley? Where are we?
Hi. I was actually on a phone call when you were talking about something. I just kind of wanted to go back to how you were talking about when you forgive people and like the way, like, I know with us working with families, I work for Nee Johnson Onic, Child and Family Services Prevention. And I just want to kind of touch, I had a question about that. So when they say, I guess, if you forgive people, do you need to, I've heard you had to say it to them, but if you don't want to say it to them, can you just forgive them like within yourself and to let the past go, I guess?
Well, Moretta's going to tell you if you write a letter to that person, whether they're dead or alive, as
Yeah.
long as you read it, that whole process is for you.
Mm-hmm.
And to be the ability to forgive those people for their learned behaviors.
Yeah.
I think that's the important, and that's what frees us up from all of that. I mean, we're all still carrying 250 years on our backs and our shoulders and all over our bodies. We're still carrying all of that. I'm not mad anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm finished with being mad at the government. I'm finished being mad at the church. I'm finished with all of that anger. It's not mine to begin with. It never was. When I learned how to forgive my father for being a sick individual that he was, knowing that hurt people, that he's just doing what was taught to him, when I started recognizing all that, it freed me up to be able to forgive my dad for not having those skills not to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Then it helped me to forgive my grandfather, because that's where my dad
Right.
learned it.
Right.
Then I had to forgive residential schools, because that's where my grandfather learned it.
Yeah.
Then I had to learn how to forgive myself, because if hurt people, I continue to hurt myself,
Right.
or internally or externally, but mostly it's been internally, where I'm not good enough, I'm stupid, I continue to put myself in abusive relationship, all those things. And when I could forgive my father, I could actually forgive myself and understand, why the hell did I do that? I would never brag about this, but I had so many notches on my belt that my belt actually fell off. When I learned how to forgive myself, I went and bought a new belt. Not a notch on it. Learning all those things has been the curse. But that forgiveness part, it what frees us up from that situation, frees us up from that behavior, frees us up from that memory, frees us up from that the experience, the emotional experience to pictures in our heads. Does that sound like we're in the same ballpark?
Yes. Same ballpark.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also I wanted to ask as well, since we work with children and children nowadays are exposed to so much, no way more than I assume what we all knew at, preteen age and younger children, with the mix, with them getting mixed signals on, like you said, children should just be children, no gender, no, boys can't wear pink type deal. That how do we, I guess, do that journey with them, but without them feeling that, oh, well, all my friends are this way, so I don't know, I'm gonna like girls because my friends do, or I know it's an experiment, fast life as well, learning that. But like, what would you say would be, how do we help guide them or walk beside them with that?
Well, remember what I said earlier, we have to go back to the very beginning.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the rites of passage. Let's go back to the ceremony, welcome home ceremony of that
Mhm.
spirit coming into the family. Let's go back to all of those ceremonies from day one. Even today, we go into sweat lodge and have the Aboriginal people say, "Can I bring my son in? He's 8 years old. You think it'd be too hot for him?" My kids have been going into the sweat lodge from week 0
Mhm.
right into the sweat lodge, so that they know where they belong. I really need to. I really believe we need to swing back to our rites of passage for whatever nation we come from. I have heard so many different rites of passage, but even with those rites of passage, it has to deal with the letting go of luggage, letting go of baggage that we're carrying.
Mhm.
Every one of our ceremonies ask us to do that. Now, us living that lifestyle, like I said, the kids are watching. I got a really quick story. I hope we have a lot of time yet. This is a really quick story. We did a sweat lodge at the Kenny King grounds where the those designs in wheat come on. What do they call that? Somebody help me with that. It happens in fields where there's a design on there, and anyways, one of those things happened. Uh, Property of Kenny King, and a bunch of men and women went back there to look. We ogled at it because it was such an extraordinary sight to see. Crop circle, I love you. Whoever said that, thank you. We wanted to celebrate it, but we also wanted to acknowledge it. So one of them said, "Okay, let's have a sweat lodge." Okay, then. So tomorrow we come back here and we build this sweat lodge. Man, we worked all day. We did everything that we needed to do for a sweat to happen. Running in and out of the bush and getting what we needed. Had our sweat lodge all ready, had the fire ready to go. Everything was ready to go. 15 feet away from our sweat lodge, the children built a sweat lodge. Not one of them were over the age of 12. They built their own sweat lodge. We gave them some of our grandfathers to go into that sweat lodge. And when they went in, they were in for a long period of time. And me being as controlling as I can be at times, I went to their side of their sweat lodge and I hit their lodge and I said, "It's time for you guys to sing." And one of the kids hollered out, "We're not finished talking yet." So I took my tail between my legs and went back to my chair and I sat there and shut my mouth. Point being, our children are watching. Point being, our children are watching us do something that's significant. They're watching us do something that's healthy. They're watching us do something to deal with conflict in the community. They're watching us. And they did and built their own. So what do we do with the children? Inclusion. It really brings home that inclusion is a healthy concept. Again, whether we're children, whether we're two-spirit, males or females, that inclusion is the biggest part in all of it. And you and I are going to run into this question an awful lot over our lifetime because we are working with our children. Okay, where do we start? What do we do? I really believe that we need to continue on with conversations like this and having it recorded and having it put down so that we can see what rites of passage are all about, what our ceremonies are all about, and to implement our relationship with those children and those clientele, I suppose. I hate the word clientele, the people we're working with, family members, community members. Does that ring a bell? Can you see that? Oh, they're too young to come in here. Oh, no, that's no, they would never be able to handle it. They'd never be able to handle the talking about. And we even do that to old people. Got a concern with our mothers and fathers, and we go off in the corner over there and we whisper and come back. Oh, well, why didn't you include your parents? Well, they couldn't handle it. They wouldn't be able to handle it. Well, they can, they do, and they always will. All those kids that you're working with, they can't handle it. All those mothers that are having their kids taken away, they can't handle it. All those fathers can't handle it. If we keep believing that, we're not going to handle it. So does that sound like the going in the right direction with that answer to that thought? Pick someone. Caitlin, pick someone.
You want me to pick somebody?
Yeah. Where are we right now?
Well, we're sitting at about 25 minutes left of our session today. I feel like it's been really good. Thank you, everybody that has been sharing, using the chat, coming off mute, putting your hands up. I feel like this has been like a very, like we're all contributing to this conversation and we're all learning together, which is exactly what me and Pat had talked about this morning. So, it's great. And we're moving in the right direction, in my opinion, as well, I think. So, would anybody like to ask a question, or I can go back to the questions we have in the registration, Pat?
How about a comment?
Or a comment?
Yeah. Are you okay with today? Or do you agree or disagree? I love that. I love it when somebody's, I disagree with what you said. I really love that part. Then I'm more compassionate enough to spend time with them to relay what I said so it's more acceptable to themselves and myself.
Seeking to understand today.
Yeah,
for sure. We have Jacob who has their hand up. Join us, Jacob.
Thanks, Caitlin. Hi, Pat. Yeah, so I work at the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies, and I'm doing some work with the 2S LGBTQ+ community. And I guess like one thing that sometimes comes into my mind, like a question, I suppose, is, when I think of like LGBTQ, and these are like colonial like concepts and identities, Western identities, and then you have Two-Spirit identity, which of course is more traditional, and then the way that we kind of like take up the term Two-Spirited and we put it in with all of the other bits of the acronym. So it's like 2S LGBTQ, and we kind of wrap it all together as one. And I'm sometimes like wary of doing that because I wonder sort of like how different or how we need to treat sort of Two-Spiritedness as like a nuanced, sort of more unique, different identity than LGBTQ. But at the same time, Two-Spirited folks could probably also identify as LGBTQ on top of being Two-Spirited. So I guess sometimes I struggle sort of with how to like make sure that I'm honoring that Two-Spirited part of someone without wrapping them up in these sort of like Western colonial ideas of LGBTQ that I've been working in? I don't know if that's a tough question, Pat, but yeah.
I don't know if it is or not. I love you for who you are. I totally accept who you are. I welcome you into our family and into our community. I'm really uncomfortable when somebody calls me Mr. Green or Ms., or I've heard people referred to as Ms. or Mrs. But when people call me Mr. Green, that's a colonial term that gives role and position to the person that we're addressing. So I'm a bit uncomfortable with pronouns. You know, I'll talk to people and introduce people by their first name and their last name and maybe their profession, but you know, we're so consumed with sex all the time. But when I'm sitting here, I'm not concerned with your sexuality. My sexuality has nothing to do with what we're doing here. That Mr. Green, I totally stay away from, because we've had to wear so many labels, and now we're starting to make up labels for ourselves. I'm confused with that, and I'm going to have to play with that for the next while. Is that, you know, I've fought my whole life and fought against the Board of Education that labeled our kids with post-traumatic stress, and labeled our kids with attention deficit. All these labels that are labeled on our children. Now we're creating our own labels. Teach me how to love you. I didn't say teach me how to have sex with you or teach me how to do anything else other than teach me how to love you. And the only way I know how to do that, to deal with that, is by, first of all, learning how to love myself. Learning how to bring that forward, as opposed to this is Pat Green with initials after his name. You know, all those labels that the outside world puts on us, and we create our own labels now. And I'm kind of taken aback by that. It's not my business, but you know, if people want to be called a certain label, okay, I'll call you that, but I'm not going to impose that on you. I'm not going to impose that on your position. So I'm not sure if I would be talking to a male or female if this screen was black. And yet I still love and respect you. Is that kind of a ballpark there?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Pat. It's like almost like a sort of not the point. Like if we bring it back to sort of love and like that kind of piece, the labels fall away a little bit. It is the point and it's not the point. And that's why these conversations are so nuanced, I feel.
Yeah. Hey, I'll stand with whoever wants to call themselves whatever they want to call. I'll stand with you. I really will. I mean, we stood alongside of white supremacists when they had to go fight against Nazism. And we stood by Canada and the United States as they went to war against the rest of the world. We stood by that so that Canada and the United States can hold up their values. I stand with whatever anybody wants to call themselves, whatever label they want to call themselves. I'll utilize it as much as our relationship will require.
I'm also just like, I'm thinking about this in a new way as well. I think I was going to try and type it in the chat, but bear with me as I kind of try to put my thoughts together. But just thinking in terms of like our culture and how we view things with this, like we are all connected, we are all community, we are all relations to each other, to nature, to our different communities. And so we've chosen this two-spirit term, and that's something that we have used. And then in Western society, I feel like because there is just, well, because there's so much going on, and because there's it's very easy to kind of fall into the background, that we need these labels like the LGBT2 or LGBTQ to ensure that we are able to kind of like say who we are when there's so much going on. Where is with Indigenous culture, Aboriginal culture, or in all of our different nations, we always take that time to appreciate the individuality of each person, and we take that time to understand each and every person. Where in Western society, it's a lot harder to do. So these labels have come forth more and more and more, which is perfect. Yeah, like Pat said too, I will love you the way that you need to be loved, and that's end of story. I will love you the way that you need to be loved. And so I think I get what you're saying with not wanting to throw them together, but and then also, yeah. Like it's a really interesting question. I really appreciate that. So thank you, Jacob. I see we have Jamie too.
Yeah, Jacob, that's a great question, and I really appreciate that. And I think, Caitlin, a lot of what you were saying about having those labels as something that brings people out of the shadows into the forefront. And I think, as more and more identities get added to said acronym, I think it's not necessarily not recognizing it, but it is giving that space, right? It's holding space for people and showing that people who are two-spirit, who are intersex, or who are asexual, people that usually are not necessarily seen, are being given an opportunity to be seen as part of the larger community, while still recognizing that each unique person within said community and each identity group is very unique and very different. So it is absolutely a combination of how do I love you? How do I respect you? How do I interact with you at an individual level, but also providing that recognition and that acceptance, and also just bringing awareness. People didn't know what two-spirit was prior to it being included in that acronym as a wide population, as a generalization. So now people are talking about it, and people are asking and saying, what does this mean? What do these people, how do we love these people? How do we include these people? And it's just really giving that recognition to folks who have typically been unrecognized and unappreciated in the past.
Well, I think it was a friend of mine, one of my uncles, started utilizing that term here in this territory in Ontario. His name was Vern Harper, and he brought out the concept of two-spirit, and I can understand what he was talking about, and I appreciate what he was talking about. Very quick story: a friend of mine who is 60 scoop came to me about maybe 25 years ago, and she had just taken a trip down to my reserve and to some of the more traditional people and values, and they were talking about talking exactly what we're talking about here today. When she came back to Toronto, and that's where I was working at the time, she was really upset. And her concept was, well, that was a waste of time. We went there to talk about two-spirit issues, etc., and it got totally blown out of the water, Pat. And I said, well, how did that happen? She says, well, I'll tell you the truth. They don't even have a term for two-spirited. They don't even have a term for two-spirited. Think about that. If they didn't have a term for two-spirited, what's the issue? We were welcoming enough and respectful enough not to divide two-spirited up away from the rest of the community. They were totally acceptable in all forms. And the more I hear about it, the more I witness it across the prairies, over the mountains, we all have that same claim. But since we've been making the distinction of being two-spirited as opposed to being heterosexual, hello? Whose problem is it? Now, if we go back to our teachings, our traditions, our language, it doesn't define two-spirited as something that's unhealthy. Totally acceptable in our community. In our community, they even have a voice. The two-spirited have a voice in our longhouse. We have two-spirit people who are faith keepers. We have two-spirit people who are chiefs and clan mothers. So where did that all come from then? And remember, I talked earlier about the colony and the effects it has had on us, and what are we going to do with all of that? What really belongs to us and what really belongs to the outside world? Division, male, female, family, married, not married, Mr., Ms., Miss, all those other things. Where does that come from? And I spent a lot of time traveling, a lot of time in ceremony, a lot of time listening, and not once did I hear that it's traditional to be discriminated against because you're two-spirited. That's a new concept to me. And it's a new concept to me. Two-spirited concept, that they are somehow different from me. We all eat the same thing. We all have water. We all have minerals. We have all those things that make us human beings. Where did that all come from? So maybe instead of looking at the traditions and teachings, maybe we should take a look at the colonies and how the colonies have affected us and what the colonies bring into our communities, to see where all of that stems from, so that you and I can gain enough momentum to be able to forgive them because they went through it themselves. I have empathy for people who are racist, or I have empathy for people who are homophobic. I have empathy for anyone who suffers from any of those dis-eases. As a family and a community, dis-ease. Let's find out where it comes from. What I suggest that you all do, and I challenge everyone that I work with, I want you to Google, and if you got something to write with, put this name down. Google more than bows and arrows. And when you finish that one, there's another one called They Lied to You in School. And as soon as they come up, you'll know what I'm talking about, because what they talk about is the Aboriginal contribution to today's society. And it's changed my outlook on who we are as Aboriginal people, because what it talks about is the civilization, the huge civilization that was here before contact. Let's explore that. Now let's take, you know, you all studied women's issues, you studied lots of issues, but let's really take a look at this two-spirited. Where did that come from? Where did we learn that? Because it has nothing to do with who we are as Aboriginal people. Now, I understand that we have to adjust ourselves to live in this society. So if you're asking me to work with these issues, then let's work with some issues that instill confidence, that still instill well-being. Hear what I'm saying with that? Let's reevaluate those. Let's all go back to our teachings to see where it's not an issue in our teachings. And like someone said earlier, it's about the 7 grandfather teachings. So if we live that way, we're going to exude it, and people are going to. They're certainly feeling our langers, our fears, our shames, and our guilts, and they're certainly feeling all that. But when we start collecting all those things and that pride that comes from knowing that totally we had a civilization that was based on well-being, that side of the world had a psychology based under fear. So we need to come to, I needed to come to terms with that so I could really understand. So I could really appreciate that we had no part in that division or acknowledging because you sleep with a woman that you're horrible. That was not our business. Yeah? Because I don't see anywhere in our teachings where it says that we beat up on gays and lesbians and short people and women and children. Believe me, I looked for it, but it's not there. That's where I want to be. That's where I want to be now. Let's bring forward everything that we contributed to today's society. And you'd be really surprised. Psychology, dentistry, agriculture, you name it. Those are all things that we had long before. So I think we're going in the right direction. To me, today is an introductory to looking at the ways we're changing our thinking, I think our attitudes and ownership to whatever we're going through. Because if I own everything that I'm sharing with somebody coming into the bush that we're all stuck in, then they're going to have a pathway also. So everything that we're doing here is creating a pathway. Again, back to rites of passage, back to boundaries and boundary settings and all those wonderful things that our people had a grasp on. But I want to hear commitment. I want to hear commitment for you. You'll check out those two, just those two. It gets to be contagious to really look out and see the healthiness. It's really contagious. So that's a really good, really good seeds. Okay, where are we?
We are 4 minutes from 12, so we have kind of come to a little bit of a conclusion of our conversation at just the perfect time. I think one thing I did want to end with is there was a question about, are there any spaces or programs specifically for Two-Spirit and Indigiqueer youth involved in child welfare specifically? Also, any mentorship programs or opportunities for leadership in the sector? So I know we have a ton of of knowledge between everybody in this group at the moment. So I don't know if I wanted to bring that question forward and see if I send out some kind of post survey or post email just to connect with you all. If anybody has any opportunities that they would like to bring forward or email back to me, I can definitely put that all together and email it back out to the group as well, so that we can have that question answered by whoever had answered that question. And also just providing resources for everybody that was involved today, as we're all trying to work towards the same thing. And I think that that would be a great way to kind of wrap this up as the first meeting. I think moving forward too, speaking on those rites of passage, like Pat was saying, that would be a great kind of topic for possibly our future LGBT2SQIA meeting next time, so that we can kind of look to further this conversation and more topics, if Pat's open to that. And awesome, getting a big thumbs up, so I love that. And I think I wanted to try and push for another session like similar to this one in the coming months. Definitely want to hold something in June as well. So we will look to do that, and I will then I'll send out a post email to everybody, just kind of reaching out and connecting. And if anybody has any of those opportunities, definitely send them my way, and I will compile everything and send them back out to the group, so we're all informed and hopefully able to provide better service and resources to our youth.
But just before we close out, can we go around this circle? I don't know how many people are here. What's one word, just one word describes this morning?
Awesome. I am very open to that. Let me start here. Oh, we have Jennifer. Also, yes, if anybody had any closing remarks or Miigwech or Nyauts, then feel free to put your hand up. But Jennifer, how are you?
Ani, I'd just like to say, Chimiigwech Pat, words are very powerful. So the word I would like to say is sacred. Miigwech. Miigwech.
Secret. Thank you. Okay, I'll just go from the top of the bottom of the list. Also, if you'd like to utilize the chat, I guess that's good too. I am so sorry, Altanisha Taylor, if you would like to start us off with, or go second for our words.
Kind. Strength.
Thank you. Amanda Gibson.
Enriching.
Thank you very much. Brianna. Are you there, Brianna? Okay, Heather, how are you today? How did you like the session?
She's with Brianna.
Yeah, yeah, Heather and Brianna are together. Jacob.
Oh yeah, okay. My word would probably be love.
Hey.
Thanks so much, Pat.
Thank you. Jamie Lynn. Jamie.
I would say truth.
Wedge. Jennifer.
Miss Jennifer?
Yes. Oh, yes. Jennifer
I
B.
I would say honored. I'm honored to be included in these conversations and to be part of this growth. And it's just a lot of honor here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer C.
I think Gen C already went. That was Jennifer at the first
Oh,
one.
yes, yes, yes.
I went already.
Yeah.
Miigwech.
Sacred. Jeremiah. Joshua.
I want to say miigwech to Pat and everyone else for sharing today. It was really, really good discussions, but the one word I would say would be acceptance. Miigwech.
Thank you. Julia.
Sego Pat, Julia here from Six Nations, Niawe. My word is transitioning, transitioning humanity, transitioning spirit, transitioning in this time, Niawe. Right on.
Ever, yeah. Somebody understands. Love it.
Thank you. Kayla. Lana. Are you guys just ignoring me? I feel like people are just ignoring me.
No, I didn't ignore you. I actually put it in the chat. So.
Oh, okay. No worries. No worries. I was just joking. But would you like to say your word?
I just said it was informative. I liked it because when you get teachings, you don't think about a lot of the other aspects of it, right? In terms of, but does it actually say this or does it actually say that? And that's what I found was very informative because it's thinking outside that box. Even though we say the color is just red, it's not just red. It's a multiple of other colors combined to be that color. And that's what I found interesting is so that you think out of that box because our old tradition is this is what it is and this is how it's said. And you couldn't stray from that. And that's what's important to know that you're not straying from it. You're just being inclusive of it all and pulling in all those colors. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah. Lisa, how are you?
I'm good. I like that statement that was made about don't walk ahead of me. So I'm just going to say to everyone, just be my friend.
Hey.
Thank you. Moretta.
My word, I think, would be knowledge, because I think that with Pat and carrying the knowledge, and I think that's going to be important to move forward with all of this, so that being able to share, and I think it's really good that this is a beginning for this group, and to move forward and carry that knowledge, because it's something that's going to move forward in the future for this miigwech.
Margaret, we have now. Okay, Reen.
I just wanted to thank Pat and everyone else who shared. My word, I would say, is hopeful. Hopeful for our youth, our children, our families, to be able to just feel like they belong and feel like they're accepted and loved. So, thank you.
Praise. Nice to hear from you, Reen. I haven't heard from you since camp last year either, so that was awesome to see some familiar names here. Stephen.
I think inspirational, just with people's stories and sharing and the hope for the future. I think is what I'm walking away from.
Thank you. Juanita?
I would like to say encouraging. It's very encouraging that we can all get together and talk about this, and very relieving that we have an elder here that is so accepting and very caring and kind, and we that was a breath of fresh air today. So miigwech.
Ooh, Pat.
That's everybody.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you,
And
guys.
Wilma. Oh, we have one more. We have Wilma, and then I think I'll go through and read the chat because I've seen a bunch of stuff coming in.
Ani, usual, can we, I'll say, Akadewin. That means love. Like it was, when we talked about, two-spirited. Oh, sorry, I don't even show my face up here. So when we talk about two-spirited, that's, being loved, and we're taught from our very first teachers, which are our parents. That's the way I looked at it. And even though some of them said that it's the older people that don't understand what two-spirited is about, like they get kind of upset, but they still are our first teachers, and they too along the way are learning to pick it up. That's how I say it. Not today I win. Love, strength, yeah. Robin.
Thank you.
Mm.
I think my word today will be gratitude. I'm just very, very happy and grateful that I get to share all of this space with everybody who was here today. It was just such a good collection of energy and contributions from all sides. So thank you so much for your time and your commitment and showing up with an open mind and willingness to learn and educate as well. So thank you. Miigwech, Nyawa.
Hey,
And I think Pat will do a little closing for us before we close off.
I sure would. I love where we're at. I want to thank everybody for letting me be part of all of this. I'm a grandfather. I'm concerned about where we're at, all of us. I'm concerned about our future. I was happy to hear somebody say hope. 50 years ago, that wasn't part of our dialogue at any given time. 50 years ago. Things have changed a lot. Two things to think about, and I'll hang up. We are not Canadians. This old man, one of my ancestors, just sent me a message, and that message was, we are the royalty here, Turtle Island. We need to get that back. We need to present our parenting skills. We need to present everything that we contributed to this society and be acknowledged for it. And when you see those two Zooms, you kind of understand what I'm talking about. Let's not forget that we are the royalty. I haven't lost it. I want that. I want my children to have it. Not their royalty. They got royalty like this, right? See that? Ours is like this. Our royalty is the circle. Our royalty is the love and respect from that circle, that no one is any greater or any less than another. To me, that's royalty. So I love you guys. Let's do it again. We've got a long ways to go. We've got a lot of things to talk about. But just keep on being you. I think that's the biggest ticket in all of this. With you comes compassion. Love y'all.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I will be in touch with some post event emails and communications, and hopefully we will be able to connect again. I'll make sure that everybody on this list gets a direct email from you when we host another event similar to this one. And thank you so much. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
You're the bomb, as always.
Hey, Gwetch.
Yeah,
Bye, Monty.
Robin.
Ona. Bye.
Till next time.
Soon.
Yes.